Well, obesity or overweight can come from various causes. It depends what the overweight is. It can be fluid retention, or it can be fat, can be carbohydrates, or it can be an emotional problem of not being able to let go. Because you often see people who can't let go of traumas or dogmas or anything like that. They're also the gatherers. They want to keep everything they get. But if you have if it's fluid retention, then the problem is obviously in the kidneys, in their potassium-sodium balance. Because if potassium is not enough potassium in the cells, then there's a surplus of sodium. Then you get through an osmosis process, the cells blow up. They attract all the water, and because the sodium, it keeps it in the body. But the reason of that, if there's a surplus of sodium, is normally the adrenal glands. Potassium is the main food for the adrenal glands. Potassium also you get with when they're exhausted, because stress eats away your energy and eats away the potassium. So in a case of obesity because of fluid retention, it's good to energetically, anyway, you add potassium. And because you add potassium, or to stop eating sodium. That's another way. But even if you stop eating sodium, you still don't have enough potassium. So normally it's good to do both. Add potassium and make sure that you don't get sodium so much. And when the potassium, because it's the adrenal glands, they also feed the kidneys, and that's why the kidneys are stimulated to get more and more water out of the system. So, but that's for example, a kidney problem. Also, a lot of high blood pressure. It's also caused by too much fluid in the system. It's not always only fluid, it can also be the other organ, and that's the gallbladder. The gallbladder is responsible for the fat metabolism. It's the bile that is supposed to burn the fat. If that has a disturbance, then your fat is not metabolized in the right way. And the body stores it because it doesn't know what to do with it. But this gallbladder system is also responsible for the cramping of the blood vessels. And that leads to different problems. If one organ is disturbed, then it leads to this and leads to that. And you always have to go back to the cause, and we go back to the gallbladder. But before the gallbladder, there's also a reason why the gallbladder is not doing that. So then it might be the throat again, because what is not expressed is suppressed. And suppression of emotion and frustrations very often always goes to liver and gallbladder. So, again, what we said earlier on, the suppression of emotions, they keep everything in. If you want to express certain things, you first have to make sure that the freeway here is open. And normally, if the emotional problem, if you keep it in, it will manifest. Yeah. And then, but you have to, it's like anchoring in the body. And if you release those physical anchors, then everything that's emotional will very easily come up. We often have patients who are the first or second treatment, they suddenly burst out in crying. And that's such a release, and that it puts a lot of pressure away. But another reason for obesity is that we all eat at the wrong times. We normally in our society we eat our main meal in the evening, and that's exactly the wrong time, because the body doesn't have its digestive systems don't have any energy, and then the body does something with it because it can't deal with it properly, and then stores it. Of course, then we also have the carbohydrate problem. People eat pizzas, and the relationship in the beginning, because it's sweeteners, but also sugar and carbohydrates and even alcohol. You have to say, okay, why do we want that? And the reason is always that our pancreas produces too much insulin. And if it overproduces insulin, then your blood sugars go down. And people then eat sugar or sweeteners, but these sweeteners stimulate the pancreas to produce even more insulin. So we're going into a cycle where we can't get out, and until you correct the insulin production of the pancreas, so that it doesn't produce too much insulin anymore, and then the craving for sugar totally disappears. But this overworking of the pancreas, it leads to diabetes. Because at one time the pancreas says, I work so much, now I'm taking a break.